lot today about what I thought a lot today about what I wanted to say. Um, I'm quite new to this journey. I've probably only been here maybe 10 times. Um, and I was worried that what I had to say maybe wasn't as important as some of the other things that people have shared because I have so little experience here. But I'm going to talk just a little bit about myself, about what brought me here. I was worried I was going to make it sound like I was just speaking a resume. I actually feel like I'm sitting for an exam that I didn't study for, just so everybody knows. um, but I just wanted to start by thanking everyone, the kindness and the welcoming that I've experienced here, and how treasured I feel by everyone here has just been unbelievable and so needed for me. So I guess I'll start with loss. And I experienced loss quite young in my life. My dad got sick when I was very young and died when I was 11. And it was death like right up close because he died at home. He died after a lot, like a period of illness. I don't think it was very long because it was in the 80s. So, it kind of took you quick back then when you had cancer. And that's what he had. He died from cancer. And it was a gift and a curse that at 11, I was the one who found him dead in his bed the morning that he died. So, God, that sounds so gruesome when I say it, but my first talk here was when Matt Hahn came and spoke, and he talked about impermanence, and he talked about death, and I was like, okay, yes, this makes sense to me. It totally made sense to me because I believe, feared death and been confronted with death my whole life. Um, I have a small family. I have one sister. Um, my mom died in 2010 after a short illness, stroke, sort of, heart disease, that kind of thing. So I felt like an orphan for a long time as well. And so that kind of untethered feeling put me into a place that it was hard for me to be empathetic to people because if somebody complained about being sick, I would say something like, you don't know what sick is, which is a very immature sort of way to think, I think. And I'm glad that I've grown from that. But I think I've always feared illness. I've always feared death, but I've always walked with it. I was also raised Catholic, which I am almost fully recovered from. And like Elle, I have to say that when you were speaking, it felt so close to how I feel. I'm very new in my journey. I am not a practicing Buddhist. I've always been interested. I've always been eager to learn, but never been a practitioner. And organized religion was never where I felt as a woman there was a place for me, especially in Roman Catholicism. Um, and I also associated like the priests and the nuns coming around the house when my dad was sick. He was very religious. So there was that part of fearing death, but being confronted with the reality of death so young. Because I think a lot of us are able to think that we're, immortal well into our 20s and that reckless kind of behavior. And I never really had that because I've always been confronted with what it really meant and knowing like what a cold body looks like in a funeral home. And so the Buddhist idea that I think I understand of impermanence was a comfort to me because I think in a lot of ways we use euphemisms for death. We talk about people passing away or they passed or I lost them because saying they died sounds harsh, grim, gruesome. I don't know. Um, and I always felt that calling it like it is was best. So I think I had, as a younger woman, it was a harsher view with a lot less compassion and a lot of fear, because again, that fear was deep. And then I got cancer. And my dad was only 43 when he died, which is young. You know, my mom was a widow at 39 in 1985. She had these two, you know, girls. I was 11. My sister was, you know, 14. And that was not what we planned, I don't think. And then I got sick. And deep down, I think I thought that, well, it was going to be one of us. It was me or Kelly. Kelly's my sister. And I lied to my mom about the diagnosis for the first few weeks because she, the same day I had my cancer for to try and remove some of the tumor, my mom had a quadruple bypass. So she had enough going on her plate, and I didn't feel like telling her the truth would be the way to go. I was informed in no uncertain terms that that was not the way to go. Just in case anybody's ever wondering, that's not the way to go. Don't lie. Tell the truth, even if you think it's going to be hard. And that, again, that lesson was, I feel like, part of the path that led me here, that taught me how to be a grown up and how to be the person that you want to be, that you were meant to be. I think that I was meant to be. I hope that I was meant to be. And getting sick, and I had to go through chemotherapy and radiation. And I remember people saying to me, "Oh my God, you're so strong, you're so brave." I couldn't do it. And I remember how annoying that was to me, like I had a choice. And I remember people said it a lot, like, "Oh my God, you're so brave, you're handling it so well." I didn't really feel like I had a choice, but I guess I did. I guess there's always choices. But deep down, again, I was afraid to die. And I was afraid of what I would leave behind. And I was fearful selfishly too, because of the unknown, because death is that final mystery or adventure, as Dumbledore says. I don't know. But I got comfort in, I liked the idea that, you know, there was a heaven and everybody would be there when you died, but I don't believe it's true. I want to, though. I wish it was true, but I don't think it is. The Buddhist teachings around being more realistic and being, it's a kinder realism, though, and that's what I think draws me. So I had survivor guilt after I got sick because my dad died and I didn't. And there were 4 other women who were sort of going through the same treatment that I was going through at the time. It was a gynecological cancer, it was endometrial cancer. And it was stage 4. It was in my lymph nodes. It wasn't good. Nobody had a lot of hope that I was going to be okay. The doctors were like, let's figure out what's going to kill you, like chemo wise, and then knock it back a few milliliters, and then we'll go and see how we go. And I was very lucky. And but those other 4 women weren't. And so for a long time, I wondered, those women had children. I didn't. Those women had husbands. I didn't. Why were they selected to die and I got to live? So I'm still kind of struggling with that, I guess. But I think what I've been able to bring is the desire to live the life that I was expected to and be the best person I can be. And that's when I started learning more about compassion and about generosity and kindness without judgment. And I have a degree in social work, which was an accident. I accidentally became a social worker on the way to being a lawyer, and I sort of turned off and fell off that path and like tumbled into a social work career, which people were always shocked when they heard what program I was in at the school that I went to. There was a big fashion program at that school. There was a big radio and television program at that school. And I have no idea why people thought I belonged in those things, but they did. And, oh, really? You're in social work? Oh, all right. Really? Yeah. And because I think it wasn't my driving passion to be a social worker, it turned out that I was great at it and I loved it. And it was a chance for me to connect with people on a level that could bring some of the things that I learned about myself, about what I've learned about the world, what I've learned about what I needed when I was sick, when I hoped to have when I lost my parents, that compassion and kindness without judgment, that all of those things that I see in everyone here. So some of my work in, in social work, I saw the impacts of incarceration, though I do think I experience it differently. It is a very different system here in Canada, and I'm not saying it's better, it's just different. We don't have private carceral institutions here in Canada. So I struggle a lot with learning and understanding what that system is. Our system is still wretched and terrible, and mass incarceration is still um, a huge problem. Folks who are impacted by poverty and impacted by addiction and mental health issues are greatly represented in incarcerated populations, so much more than they are in outside populations. Um, and I remember then recognizing the folks who would be coming into the welfare office that I worked at, and they would just have been released, and they would show up in the office in their orange jumpsuits because, I don't know, they didn't want to give them their clothes back. Sometimes I saw so much cruelty, and I saw an abuse of power in a way that sickened me in so many ways. And that's in, so-called kind Canada. Um, and I always believed that people deserved interventions early, and that solving crime wasn't the answer. Preventing crime was. Universal basic income, investing in communities, defunding the police, not getting rid of it, but making sure that folks who are impacted by poverty, folks who are impacted negatively in the school systems, people getting the supports they need, prenatal care, even that far back, in making sure that folks have a chance. And I remember really, and I wanted to bring this up because when I talk to people about the need for prison reform and for that, incarceration doesn't work and punishment isn't what we should be looking at. I don't always know how to answer this, because I get the "what about Paul Bernardo" question. And I don't know if everybody knows who that is, but Paul Bernardo is a pretty famous, horrific serial killer that hurt and maimed a lot of people. And when I try to talk to people about prison reform and about, that incarceration is not the answer, they say, "Well, what do you think about him? Shouldn't he be in jail?" And I don't actually always have a good answer for that. Um, what I know is what we have now isn't working, and cruelty isn't working, and kindness without judgment does work, and I've seen it work. I came here because of dog rescue. I work for a Great Dane rescue called Great Dane Angels. I've rescued 3 Great Danes. And it was really watching, somehow through Instagram, the algorithm was my friend, and I was able to see the work of Marlies Mutz, and I was able to see the work of Zach Scow with the Positive Change Program. And I always wanted to know how something like that could be here in Canada. And I think there are maybe some smaller programs that happen, but there isn't anything that I've ever heard of that's significant the way that Positive Change is in California. And I remember hearing Zach doing a live, and he said that folks who are incarcerated are the last group of people that it's okay to discriminate against them. It's okay to use horrific language to describe folks who, who are returned citizens. The dehumanizing language that people use to describe folks who are incarcerated, who were incarcerated. And that hit me so hard, because we're not allowed to discriminate against any other group of people. It's seen in a negative light, but it seems universally acceptable. that it's okay to use dehumanizing language about folks who have been involved in the prison system. That hit me so hard. And I just know that I can't be the only solution, but I can certainly be a part of it. And I can help people understand. I can talk to people. I can be someone who has never personally been impacted by the prison system. Um, I am lucky enough that I haven't had any significant addictions that have touched me closely. But I feel like people like me who aren't close to it, but can say, I'm not willing to live in a world where it's accepted, folks that aren't close to it can be the ones that can start educating other folks and becoming an ally and real allyship. And that's what my goal is. You can't name yourself an ally, but I'm hoping that I can be seen as an ally by the people who I want to ally myself with. And learning about allyship was a real eye opener in university. I remember being told that all white people are racist and going, that doesn't sound right. And then opening my mind, kindness without judgment, being compassionate, and really learning. And I learned from a book by Ann Bishop called Becoming an Ally. Um, and that's my goal. And that's what brings me here is the hope to be seen as an ally, to learn. I don't know if I have anything to teach anybody, but that's pretty much my story, why I'm here and why I keep coming back to all these beautiful faces. And I really hope that this was what everybody was hoping for when you asked me to speak.